Hey y'all, it's time for a new video, and this one has been a long time coming. I think most of the people who watch my YouTube are my clients, so hi. I think this is going to be a good one about maximizing your coaching experience, and I think that this topic would apply to any relationship you're in. It could be a mentorship, it could be even a romantic relationship, but it kind of sets up a method for you to get the most out of a service that you're essentially paying for, or you may not even be paying for it if it's a mentorship or a relationship. However, I think you can still benefit from hearing this. So, to preface that, I'm gonna just discuss a little bit about what it means to have a coaching relationship. And so, in a coaching relationship, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you can get all the information you need off the internet and whatever," and I don't think it's about that. If you take, let's say, Kobe Bryant, for example, he has a coach. It's not that he doesn't know how to play basketball, but he still has someone on his side helping him, guiding him. So it's definitely a luxury to have a coach, as is many of the things that we participate in. We are very lucky to be able to have people we can hire who help us get to our goals. Coaching is one of those luxuries, and you obviously are going to want to maximize the money you're investing into it. And so I think when people go into a coaching relationship, they want to do well. And I think that when that relationship fails because of either the coach or the athlete, and I call anybody who hires a coach an athlete because that's kind of the goal. You want to treat everybody like an athlete. I think everybody wants the relationship to succeed, and I think we talk a lot about the coach's value and what they can do to improve, and we kind of miss the mark on what an athlete can do to make the most out of the relationship. So I kind of wanted to address a little bit of that, and we're going to start with communication. So communication is a huge factor, especially for people who are engaging in online coaching. I know a lot gets lost in translation via email or just text, like words that we use. And oftentimes you don't know what the other person is receiving, and you don't know what the other person is trying to convey, often without tone. So this is kind of why I like doing these videos, is because you can see when I'm speaking to you kind of where I'm coming from and how I'm trying to address something without it being taken maybe in an offensive way. It's just like blanket advice where anybody can like take bits and pieces and apply it to what they're doing. So in regards to communication, you can be on any spectrum of communication. You can be on the lower end where you're not contacting your coach, you're not checking in with them, you're not really sending them videos or pictures. They don't really know what's going on with you. Maybe you check in once a month to get a new program or every so often. And that's on the lower end, or maybe you don't communicate at all, and you don't contact. Maybe the coach automates your programming or what have you. So that would be on the lower end, and then you have the higher end, which is constant questions and check-ins and or second guessing yourself and verifying things, and that's on the other end of the spectrum. So I encourage people to kind of come in the middle of that. So in order to maximize communication, you want to not only be autonomous, so use the resources that you are given by your coach. So one of the reasons I say this is there is so much information out there, and there are so many details that we can get wrapped up in that sometimes we get lost in the minutia of things. So I encourage people, by be autonomous, I mean, if there are things that you can kind of independently discover, a question that gets asked a lot is about rules and regulations of different federations, which I've annoyed coaches in the past by asking them questions about that. And clarification questions are, I think, a little bit different than what is this? Because the what is this can easily be answered through a Google search. So the reason that helps a coach client relationship or a coach athlete relationship is because those few minutes that we spend answering these more general questions that can be Googled is time that you're stealing from yourself, that you can spend on other things to discuss with your coach. And I know it kind of feels like, oh, why can't you just do both? You can do both, but there's only 24 hours in a day, and there's only a certain number of hours that your coach is probably working. They're probably working with other athletes. So if you have a few minutes a week or a few minutes a day or an hour every few days to have this contact with your coach or your personal trainer or your mentor or whoever, and you spend it talking about things that you could have found out on your own, you're wasting, essentially you're wasting your money, because that's something that you can access for free versus your coaches that, you know, the more of like the nuances and the expertise that you want to get out of them. So I think that I think that you could definitely be on both ends, and you want to be very selective. At the same time, you need to communicate things that you need, things that you want, things that you like. You know, you have to make sure you ask the right questions, and you have to provide feedback. So, and again, this goes back to when you communicate via email or via text message or messenger, a lot of things can get lost in translation. So you need to give feedback and let your coach know what works best for you. If you know, sometimes we don't know what works best for us, and it helps to have a person kind of bring us to a conclusion that we might not understand. So maybe I think I'm a visual learner, but every time my coach shows me something I don't understand, but when they explain it to me with words, all of a sudden I understand. Maybe that means I'm not the visual learner that I thought I was. So there are things that other people can grasp about you that you might not be aware of. So it's really important to give feedback if you know it, but don't stress yourself to actually box yourself into a category, or to try to figure everything out on your own. So your coach isn't going to know things about you without you telling them. So, and this is still under the umbrella of communication. So if, let's say, you are having health issues or dietary issues or emotional stressors or physical, whatever it is, if you don't tell your person, they're not going to know about it. And, you know, if they don't know about it, they can't adapt your programming for that. So, at the same time, you know, like I said, there can be too much information. So, you know, something clear and concise, like, hey, I'm dealing with some issues, you know, my daughter's been sick. That would be better than, oh, you know, I got into an argument with my neighbor and she said this and this said that and this is what I said to them, and that gets into a whole realm of more like TMI, and it's not helping you in the terms of getting the most out of your coaching experience to actually be sharing the minutia of things. Versus giving a broad scope of, hey, this is what's going on. Obviously, there's exceptions. You know, you build relationships with the people that you work with, you know, in a coach athlete relationship. And I think there are times when it's okay to lean on a person, but again, you want to focus on what am I gaining from this communication, and you want to maximize that. So, I think I covered everything with coaching, and I think. I covered a little bit of autonomy, and that is going to be kind of the golden ticket for you guys in terms of maximizing your experience, is knowing how to figure things out for your own. I don't want, personally, for an athlete to be dependent on me for every little thing. Yes, that might mean job security for me, because you're never going to leave me if you can't figure it out on your own. However, it's better for the athlete, for sure, by a long shot, for you guys to be able to figure out your own nutrition at some point. Like, and me personally, I can't speak for all coaches, but if I can teach someone, from ground zero, not knowing anything about nutrition or training, to actually being independently able to create their own meal plans and follow their macros and stuff like that, that's awesome. And in order to get them to that point, helping them along the way, that's good. But if you're at year 3 or year 4 working with your coach and you're like, hey, what's a macro? How do I count? How do I measure my protein? You're way at the beginning. You have lost 4 years of knowledge because you didn't take the time to be autonomous, to learn things on your own, to apply what's being taught. So I think the application is what I'm trying to get at. You need to be able to apply what you're learning. So, and that's just, again, a tool to maximize. So another thing, motivation is a huge factor. I know that people get off their plan once in a while, and I highly encourage you to find motivation. And this is going to be a completely different video at some point. I have a whole list of videos I'm working on. So motivation is a huge factor in how successful someone is with their training program. And motivation comes in many different forms, and I'm not going to get into the details of this, but you need to find what motivates you. And some blanket things that motivate people is competitions. So either friendly competitions or actually engaging in a competitive event can be motivation. Measurements can be a tool for motivation. So make sure you're weighing in every week. Make sure you're doing your measurements. Make sure, if you have fat loss goals, if you have strength goals, you do a periodic assessment of your strength. So these are motivating tools. And you have to figure out what drives you to do better. So if there's been any point in your life where you've felt really motivated, I want you to think back to that point and say, what was it, and how can I reapply that to what I'm doing now and use that as my newfound motivation to succeed. I think that's a really huge deal, and it's something that's often overlooked because motivation feels like this make believe, or what's the word? I can't even think of it. Like you can't feel it, you can't see it, so you don't. You guys know what I mean. So. But it's there, it exists, that feeling that you feel like you want to get after something. That's motivation. And I think we all experience it at different points in our lives. It's just knowing how to get that back, snap back into it and get to it. Your coach isn't going to do your work for you. All they can do is give you their plan, their knowledge, their expertise, but they're not literally going to hold your hand or feed you. I hear a lot of people say, oh, I wish I had someone to cook for me. Oh, I wish I had someone to work out with me. Oh, I wish that. The bottom line is, if you're not willing to do it for yourself, it doesn't matter if you had someone cooking for you. It doesn't matter if you had someone counting your macros. It doesn't matter if you have someone training with you. The excuses that you make, you're going to come up with new ones, and you're going to get more creative. I've been in this industry for long enough to know that if someone really wants to be there, they'll be there. And if someone wants to find an excuse, they'll find an excuse. So you have to look at your own behavior patterns. Notice what causes your successes, what causes your failures, and do more of what makes you succeed, do less of what makes you fail. So the next thing, moving on from motivation, is going to be consistency. So doing okay or hitting your mark more often than not is going to be better for you long term than doing really great and really perfect, counting your macros on the dot, doing all your training, hitting it hard for a short period of time, and then giving up for the rest of the year. So I kind of parallel this to fad dieting. So fad diets are basically what? Someone says, oh wow, I'm 50 pounds overweight. I'm going to go on a diet for 2 weeks. I'm going to try to lose 20 pounds. And then let's say by some miracle they do it. They're on it. They're on the diet. They lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And then they go back to normal, and then they gain even more weight than, before. And that it's a very clear way to see that doesn't really work, versus if that same person were to say, I'm not going to order dessert when I go out to restaurants. Let's say this person's, has that certain lifestyle. I'm not going to order desserts when I go out to restaurants. I'm going to cut down on my soda. I'm only going to have one every week, or for example, or I'm going to replace it with diet soda. Or, I'm going to have vegetables instead of rice. And, taking little baby steps like that, but being consistent over a long period of time is more likely to get you the results that you want. It might not be as noticeable, immediate, as motivating, or as make you feel as good as the 2 week 20-pound drop. But I can guarantee you, if you lose 20 pounds in a year without noticing, and then the following year you look at yourself and you're like, how did that happen? That is much more rewarding than losing the 20 pounds in 2 weeks and getting it back. So along with that, the most successful clients that I've seen have been clients who follow their plan, which is kind of obvious, right? You follow your plan, you're going to succeed. So that just goes to show that if you can consistently hit your targets, you're more likely to get to where you want to be. So this doesn't mean necessarily that if you can't follow your plan, that you won't be successful. You just need to learn what tools help you to be successful. So for example, and this is, I don't want to get on too much of a tangent because this is a topic for another day as well, but the whole macro counting, when is it right for you? I really wanted to dive into people who get into dieting and eliminate their calories by a large margin and start counting macros all at the same time. Maybe counting macros isn't right for you. Maybe you need to follow a plan because counting macros is too hard for you to learn right now with your schedule or whatever. So if you're not able to follow a plan for you, this is where communication comes in, and you need to tell your coach, like, hey, macro counting doesn't work. Can you just write me something so I can follow it for the week, and we can go from there. Excuse me, my allergies out here. My final point, and I know I make these long videos, but I also know that some of you watch me while you're doing your prescribed cardio, so I'm here to entertain, So the last point, and this is kind of an important one, is patience. So if you trust that your coach is competent and that they have a vision for you, I think it's really important they say trust the process. And with the process comes communication, obviously. And if you think that something's not working or it's not working fast enough, you can communicate. By all means, I will never completely say, this isn't how we're going to do it. Your feelings are invalid. If you feel like you need faster results, or you want faster results, or you have a deadline, you have a wedding, whatever, communicate that. And that is a valid reason. You're entitled to your feelings. You're entitled to having the rate of success that you want. However, there is another side to it. You need to understand that the person you're working with has a vision for you, has a vision for the pace of your weight loss or strength gain or whatever it is. They have an idea of how things should be, and based on the way you're responding to it, they're going to adjust to that. So jumping 10 steps ahead, or trying to get to your goal faster, it's not necessarily going to help you long term. And this is kind of what I used to have an inappropriate saying, but I'm gonna make it a PG saying. If you ever try to put icing on your cupcakes before it gets cool, what happens to your cupcake? The icing just falls right off. So that is kind of a parallel of being impatient. You are so excited for the final product that you ruin the whole thing by doing a max effort too early in your program, or by cutting your calories too much when you're trying to diet down. All of this stuff is like, you're ruining what could have been this great, wonderful cupcake with cute, like nice frosting, and now you have this cupcake that looks sad and the frosting's all dripping over the side, and it still tastes good, but like it doesn't look nice and you're not as happy with it. And so this is kind of similar to what people do when they're in a rush. Just be patient, slow it down, take your time. There's a method to the madness if your coach knows what they're doing. So along with that, I always like to take people's recommendations into consideration. I think that if your plan is not something that you can stick to, or that's something that you enjoy, you're not going to do it for very long. So there's no point for me to make a perfect plan for you if you can't follow it. So you need to enjoy it, and you need to feel like it's something that you can actually do for a long time. However, again, this is a spectrum of someone who just goes by, oh, this is what coach tells me, this is what I'm going to do, versus, oh, I think I should do this, I think I should do that, I think this should be different. If you're changing your plan to the point where it doesn't even serve a purpose anymore, I think that's kind of, that is your coach's job to step in and be like, hey, I know you want this, however, we can't do it like that. And I think a lot of that goes back to, there has to be a balance between what you want and what you need. So, I can give an example, and I know my clients watch this. So I had a client who said, I want to do a competition for powerlifting, which is squat, bench, deadlift. And when they received their program, they said, oh, why am I squatting and benching and deadlifting so much? I'm tired of doing that. And, there had to be an understanding that if you're competing in this, you kind of have to do that, It's kind of similar to saying, you're trying to train for a bodybuilding competition, but you don't want to go on a diet. It's like, well, you kind of have to. Technically you don't have to. You can show up looking however you want to look, and you can show up on the platform not having done squat, bench, dead in 3 months. But, if you want to be successful, you have to kind of practice your craft. So I think that's where the conversations need to happen. And I think this is where asking the right questions and communicating kind of make a big difference. So a good question to ask is like, hey, I'm a bit tired of doing this squat, bench, deadlift variation. Is there a way to minimize that while maximizing my strength in those movements, because I'm feeling burnt out? And then the conversation would end up being either find a different competition, or let's just do whatever and see what happens, or suck it up and do the training. So there's different ways to go about it. It just depends on the person's priorities. But the best plan is going to be a mixture of what works and what you like, but it can't be on one end of the spectrum or completely on the other. So be aware of convenience-based plans. If your coach is building a plan strictly based on what you like, if you were that adept at making a training plan, I can actually recommend, if you really think you have a good grasp on it, you can write your own plan and just have your coach look over it for you and make modifications as needed. I know some people might know a little bit more about programming and feel like they want to really be involved with it. It's the same thing as being autonomous with your nutrition. If you come up with a meal plan and you say, hey coach, can you verify if this seems like just about what I'm supposed to be doing, you say, okay, switch that out or do this or whatever, that would be a little bit better. This seems pretty good. Again, communication. So I will stop there. I always seem to make these long videos. Drop a comment, let me know what you think. Maximize your time with your coach. I hope this helped you guys. I'm gonna probably post this for my people to see. I think I've been blessed with like really good athletes who communicate pretty well. The dog's dying. Honestly, and I don't know what it is. I think the people who've communicated the best have gotten the most out of their relationship, and the people who failed to communicate didn't get what they probably could have gotten out of the relationship. So I hope this helps somebody, and I will talk to you guys soon. I'm updating you on the DEXA next week, and then physique updates every week on Wednesday on my Instagram, Mel's Moves. Talk to you soon. Bye.